Greetings, salutations, hello, and welcome to my 8 years of dreadlocks update. Yes, that's right, I've now had dreadlocks for 8 years. In fact, it's a little over 8 years because this video is kind of late, but 8 years, that has got to be worth a thumbs up. So this video is a few weeks late. I haven't known what to say. In fact, I still don't know what to say. I've just pressed record and I hope that it's going to work out for the best. But 8 years, it still doesn't sound right. It's longer than some people have been alive. And yet there are people who have had dreadlocks longer than I've been alive. So still have a long way to go before it becomes that impressive. I thought maybe I'd give a brief rundown on the history of my dreadlocks, where they started, how they progressed, how I got to this point, and how I feel about my dreadlocks now, 8 years later. So I started my dreadlock journey when I was 14. I was a few weeks or so out from turning 15. I turned 23 just a few weeks ago, and my dreadlocks were started via backcombing and beeswax. I did not know what I was doing when I started out. I had no idea. I just kind of took in a bit of information from this website and a bit of information from that website, and there wasn't really a whole lot of sort of lazy dreads type content back then. So when you saw a shiny website that was like, this product's great, and you kind of believed it. So I started my dreadlocks out with backcombing and beeswax, and not knowing really what I was doing, beeswax seemed like a good idea. There was a steep learning curve with dreadlocks. Many mistakes were made. Fortunately, with mistakes comes learning. Learning not to repeat the same mistakes. I was incredibly unhappy with my dreadlocks early on. I mean, seriously. I don't really want to use the word hate, but it was getting there. I think the only reason I was able to stick with my dreadlocks is because I'm stubborn. I didn't get a crazy amount of support when I started my dreadlocks. It took a long time to convince my parents to allow me to have dreadlocks, because you know, when your 14-year-old son says, "Can I dreadlock my hair?" It takes a certain type of parent to support that, and my parents weren't like really negative towards it, but they didn't exactly jump for joy. So I'd have to work to convince them. My friends, some were on board, some weren't. And I was still in school, and you know, high school kids, they are kind of critical. So I kind of had to put up with a lot of stuff when I was considering starting my dreadlocks, starting them, having them. And so I really didn't want those people to win, because they'd been trying to put down dreadlocks, they'd been trying to put me down for having dreadlocks, and I felt like cutting them off would be kind of giving up and saying they were right. And I didn't really want that to happen, because I don't really want to reward people for being negative towards other people like that. So I kept them, but I was very unhappy. My negative experiences with products and maintenances that I experienced early on really pushed me way far away from using products and maintaining my hair. I got to the point where I was doing nothing. I wasn't separating, I wasn't palm rolling. There was a point where I stopped washing my hair. I was ignoring it to the max, basically. These were not great times for me or my hair, shall we say. But then, strangely, at some point, things changed. Like a flower sprouting through the dirt, some hope was born, some optimism. I began to notice that the roots that had never been backcombed, that had never been waxed, they'd never been touched by anything other than growing out and forming knots slowly, because I wasn't really washing the hair, but slowly, these roots were not this nasty, waxy, solid mess. These were fresh, these were untouched, these were salvageable. These gave me hope. What I learned is that no matter how badly you treat the dreadlocks, as long as you give them the time and you have the patience to wait for the new hair to grow, you can restore them and recover from any mess that you manage to find yourself in. So somewhere around the 2-year mark, I began trimming heavily. After 2 years, my dreadlocks had grown out sufficiently enough that I was comfortable with lopping off big chunks of length. So from around 2 years to 3.5 years, I removed all of the length that had ever been backcombed, all the length that had ever been waxed. I'd spent years trying to remove what had been done to the dreadlocks via basically the beeswax, and I was not successful. I know some people have had success, I'm not one of those people, and I gave it my all. I used hot straighteners on the dreadlocks to try and melt the stuff out. I soaked the dreadlocks in anything that people recommended. I even boiled the dreadlocks to try and soften the wax and get it to rise out. I managed to get the dreadlocks so you wouldn't be able to tell they had waxing. I mean, you wouldn't be able to look at them and say they got waxing. They didn't immediately appear waxy, but the dreadlocks still did not develop in the same way that you would expect them to without the wax. The motion inside the dreadlocks was still stunted, they were still restricted, they did not develop how I knew that other people's were developing. And this is even from someone who was aware that everyone's dreadlocks will be different. I was aware that they were not working how they should. So even though I'd managed to remove all exterior evidence, when I came to do the trim, when I'd finally said enough was enough, I could see that the new growth was developing into dreadlocks how dreadlocks were supposed to look, and the ends were looking pretty much like backcombed lumps. I lopped off the backcomb lumps, looked fine on the outside, cut inside, still waxing the course of the dreadlocks, despite all I'd done. But after they were removed, just the weight lifted. The physical weight of the fact that I'd lost length of dreadlocks that were weighed down, you know, hair weight, wax weight, all that stuff, but just I felt so much better. I knew that I just got hair that was doing what it was supposed to do, and that, you know, trying to take a shortcut, or I wasn't even deliberately trying to take a shortcut with the wax, I just didn't know any better, but I got where I wanted to be in the end, and they've been growing steadily ever since. Everything I have now is just new growth. It's stuff that has grown out from the roots and that has never been messed with any products or maintenance that I now really do not hold in high regard. The only things that I do to my hair now, I wash them 2 to 3 times a week, deep clean them every 6 to 8 weeks, and I separate very rarely when individual dreadlocks require it. I think somewhere along the way I stopped thinking of dreadlocks as a finite thing. I don't think of them as like, here, these are the dreadlocks, they're like a solid thing. I just think of it now as I grow dreadlocks. And I've been growing dreadlocks for 8 years, and they will continue to grow for as long as I choose. I don't get overly attached to any specific length or any specific part of the dreadlocks. I'm more just attached to the idea of letting the hair do its own thing. I care far more about just letting the hair grow into dreadlocks than I do about saying I have this dreadlock or that dreadlock or this length dreadlock. And I think that's something that has sort of changed over time. My opinion on that has changed over time. I think the longer I've had the dreadlocks, the less sort of importance I've put onto one specific time frame of having dreadlocks, one specific length of dreadlocks, one specific appearance that the dreadlocks have taken over that time. So it's been 8 years now. I started out just before I turned 15. I've now just turned 23. I have changed a lot over the last 8 years. I've had to make a lot of important decisions about the course that my life has taken. It's not necessarily gone in the direction that I would have previously planned, but they've been good surprises. I'm honestly not sure that 14-year-old me would recognize anything about current me other than the dreadlocks. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think dreadlocks have positively influenced my life. There are specific points in my life that I know that dreadlocks have heavily influenced. I mean, seriously, I don't think that I could guarantee that my life would be better or worse with or without dreadlocks, but I can thank dreadlocks specifically for certain points in my life. I'm very glad that I started them, and I'm glad to continue growing them now. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me here for my 8 years of dreadlocks update. Starting and running Lazy Dreads has definitely been one of the highlights of my dreadlock journey. I've loved sharing my experiences here with you guys, and I've loved being able to share in your experiences thanks to the ability to sort of interconnect with all of you by running this blog and the website and the Facebook page and the Instagram page. I've had my dreadlocks for 8 years. I've been running this page for over 2.5 years now. I hope to see many more years of my dreadlocks, and I hope to see many more years of Lazy Dreads. So that was my 8 years of dreadlocks update. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, useful, informative, all likes are appreciated. If you'd like to know more about any specific part of my dreadlock journey, my thoughts before starting dreadlocks, my thoughts as I was starting the dreadlocks, my young dreadlocks experiences, or my experiences with dreadlock wax, let me know down in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to make videos on any of those subjects. If there's enough interest, just let me know with a comment. If you'd like to see more videos from me in the future, you can of course subscribe, and all my new videos will be sent to your YouTube subscription feeds. I'd really like to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope to see you again next time. Farewell!